Welcome back to AutoKnerd, the podcast where we take a deep dive into the weird, wild, and wonderful world of automotive history and somehow make it all relevant to today's modern day sales floor. Today, we're going to be cranking up the radiation levels on those Geiger counters, and we're going to be diving deep into the atomic fever dream of nuclear powered cars. That's right, there was once a time when people thought that your daily driver should have a miniature nuclear reactor under the hood, because what could possibly go wrong, right? Just don't get rear-ended or you're going to have a miniature 3 Mile Island issue on your hands. We're going to explore two of the most infamous attempts at making atomic fantasies a reality. Ford in 1958 with the Nucleon, and then also the French Simca Fulgur. Now, these were just, sci-fi magazine concepts. They were actually pitched as the inevitable future of driving. So, spoiler alert, they weren't. But the stories from these do have some serious lessons when it comes to selling today's modern day vehicles. Also, stay tuned because next week I'm going to take the craziness up a notch here, and we're going to be rolling straight into another wild idea, and it's going to be steam-powered cars, and also how the lessons that they can teach us when it comes to our modern-day sales floor. But that's right, in this era, that era was basically like, hey, let's use locomotive technology on our cars because it sounds great, right? So if you thought that nuclear-powered cars and what I'm about to cover was dangerous, you got no idea. These things actually really did exist, and they really did explode, and they really did kill people. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, some fun times ahead. Go ahead and mash that subscribe button, and let's nerd out. Here we go. So to understand why anyone would have thought a nuclear-powered car was a good idea, you have to step into the mindset of somebody in the 1950s and 1960s. The world had just emerged from World War II. Nuclear technology was like kind of the new golden boy on the block, right? You see, we harnessed the power of the atom. We dropped a bomb or multiple of them, and we figured out that hey, it could end wars, right? It lit up cities for our power plants, and at the same time, submarines were now starting to use nuclear reactors for their main propulsion. So it only made sense. The question arose: why not put it on an automobile? Because putting it in an actual reactor in a family sedan seemed like a reasonable next step. You see, the Eisenhower American dream was all about looking forward, right? We were getting into things like space travel, supersonic jets, personal nuclear reactors that could power your house were an actual pitch, and people were actually trying to develop them. Also, nuclear-powered coffee maker I came across, which was pretty awesome, and also home mixer. I kid you not, these were actual products that somebody thought up. Did they actually ever produce them? No, they absolutely did not. But why not go ahead and make one that would apparently be slapped inside your Buick, so you can drive it for miles and miles and miles and not ever have to worry about it. Well, the assumption was basically this: that by the 1980s, that we'd all be zooming around in radiation-powered vehicles, barely needing to ever refuel. Seriously, just pull over on the side of the road, swap out the reactor core about every 5,000 miles, and you got another 5 to 10,000 miles of driving. It made sense, right? I mean, super easy. Other than one minor detail, reactors require a bit more maintenance than something like an oil change. Ford was the first manufacturer to take a crack at this idea of having a nuclear-powered car. Now, the Ford Nucleon debuted as a scale model in 1958, right? This car was a bold vision of the future, provided you were okay sitting next to an untested nuclear reactor. You see, the Nucleon was supposed to have a small fusion reactor in the rear of the car, much like how nuclear submarines operated. The idea was that you'd drive around for thousands and thousands of miles without ever having to actually refuel. And then when refueling time did come, you just pull into a specialized station, they swap out the reactor core, and you're good to go. Other than we know that people today would try to change the reactor core on their own, and it wouldn't be quite like replacing the batteries in your remote. It would be more like, oh, hey, I put that there in my garage, and now it has melted through the floor. Not great. Safety was definitely an issue here. So the other problem was, well, is something that we always have issues with, and that's physics. You see, the shielding that would keep the drivers from getting that glow in the dark tan would have made the car ridiculously heavy. And even then, nobody really knew how to make a miniaturized, long lasting reactor to work in a four wheeled vehicle. So the project itself was shelved, and the Nucleon became a relic of eras of atomic optimism. But don't worry, the legacy of this thing did actually live on, and for those of you that are Fallout fans out there, you may have actually seen something like this car. You see, its influence has made its way into that whole retro futuristic gaming aesthetic. So if you've played the game or you've seen the show, you've seen a lot of the design principles behind this vehicle and the ideas that it brought forth. But I'd also like to think that fallout was probably caused by the fact that somebody got into a minor fender bender with one of these. But at least in the video games, we get to kind of see this idea play out. But as far as that goes, turning the whole of a city into a fireball really is not something that we all want to look forward to. So as far as that, never was built. But not to be outdone, the French actually stepped up to the plate with this and they said, hey, you know what? We're going to go ahead and we're going to make one as well. So Schema came out and unveiled their own nuclear-powered vehicle in 1958. Now, this was called the Simca Fulgur. Now, the Fulgur was this massive stretch. It really was, quite honestly, at the time, ripped out of a sci-fi novel. Now, today, actually, a lot of the technologies that they pitched in 1958 are being worked on, which I think is pretty awesome. So check this thing out. Schema envisioned a sleek, domed roof two-seater that would use atomic power and be fully autonomous. This one I love. And controlled by voice. I mean, heck, how much do we yell at Alexa and Siri and Gemini today? And back in 1958, they're like, oh, yeah, your vehicle will go ahead and be controlled by voice. So in other words, they were just predicting a future, the future, they weren't just predicting the future of powertrains. They basically predicted Alexa, self-driving Teslas, and concepts that never actually made it into production. But they were starting to crack the door open on a future that was actually somewhat possible. So what was the problem with this thing? Well, the same thing as the Nucleon's problem, the shielding, then the safety, and the inability to engineer a tiny reactor that accidentally wouldn't turn the whole of Paris into a no-go zone. I mean, seriously, people try to look at this thing and go, well, it could work, but having a nuclear reactor in the back of the car probably isn't the greatest idea in the world. So Schema never built an actual working prototype of this car because, again, back to that whole small nuclear reactor and the shielding being far too heavy. But it was pretty cool. It looked like something that you would see, like, for example, in the Jetsons, other than it had one wheel underneath it that it balanced on. This thing was nuts, right? So this vehicle, the Fulgur, remained a futuristic pipe dream, but it would leave us with some valuable lessons. Just because something sounds futuristic, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be practical. I'm looking at all of you with subscription-based heated seats. Not cool. Not cool at all. So what does this have to do with selling cars today? Actually, way more than you think. You see, the Nucleon and the Fulgur were classic examples of overpromising and underdelivering. They sold the dream that technology simply couldn't support at the time. Sound familiar? Every salesperson has seen products that have been overhyped, or we've overhyped them on our own. Either it's been through marketing or it's from trying to get a customer jazzed up, only to have customers be disappointed when the reality doesn't actually click with their perceived fantasy. So, for sales consultants, this is a reminder to us that honesty builds trust. It's a tempting promise that every car on the lot will change the customer's life in some positive way. Again, it all leads back to needs assessment and making sure that we're going in the right direction. But if the features and capabilities don't match your pitch, you're going to lose credibility really quickly. So, transparency about what the vehicle can do is really kind of paramount, right? Rather than telling the customer what you wish it could do, right? Or giving the customer the information as, hey, here's what you want it to do, therefore it should be able to. Because when it doesn't, customers become unhappy and disappointed. And that is exactly the opposite of what we strive for every single day. And let's be honest, no matter how advanced EV tech gets in today's modern vehicles, let's be thankful that we don't have to go ahead and instruct a customer on how to check their uranium levels before they go on a road trip at delivery. I mean, you think our jobs are tough enough now. Imagine the glowing burn marks that we would have all over our bodies. So that wraps up to this week's episode. Short, sweet, to the point, but we took a deep dive into the atomic age madness that almost turned our commutes into glowing nuclear powered, adventures. Not for nothing, I think it would have been kind of fun. Along the way, we picked up some crucial lessons about sales, trust, and why making impossible promises seems to always backfire. Next week, we're going to go and push this envelope a little bit further with a hilarious episode, all based around the idea of steam powered cars. This actually did happen because if nuclear power wasn't dangerous enough, how about going ahead and cramming a full-blown boiler under your hood and going, hey, I'm going to go for a drive? I mean, seriously, what could possibly go wrong when you have to sit there for half an hour and go, hold on, I need to get the fire going? No, 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 thank you. So if you enjoyed this episode, please do me a solid. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button real quick. But if you do have a wild idea, a wild piece of automotive history that you want to just drop my way, feel free, drop me a message on LinkedIn or wherever you stock your podcast, or on YouTube if you are following this on YouTube. So until next time, keep that Geiger counter handy and get out there, sell with integrity, and show customers that you care about them more than you care about the commission. I will talk to you next week. Have a great one.